Welcome to 2021 and the Financial Revelations Podcast. I am David Safransky, and I'm praying that 2021 is going to be a lot better than 2020. Now, it was a great year in the market, but for the country, it was really rough. And so I do think that 2021 is going to be better, and today's podcast is really my predictions, some of my predictions anyway, for 2021, for the market, for the country, for the things that we're going to have to deal with. So if you have questions, if you have comments, you can always email them to joshua@epsf.com. joshua@epsf.com. And it's going to be right on your screen somewhere right here. Okay, so let's get going with predictions for 2021. For the market, I think the market is going to be up by greater than 10% in 2021. Why do I think this? After having a really good year in the market, if you remember, February 19th of 2020 was the day before the market really fell. COVID hit the United States. The market dropped precipitously. And all along, I had been saying that the comeback of the market, the return trip, the veracity is usually almost a mirror image of the fall. And that's about what happened. The government came in and they did a stimulus package. They supported the market. They did a lot of things. And the market came back and we ended up having a really good year. The reason why I think this year is going to be greater than 10% rise in the market is because we're going to have a big stimulus package. Joe Biden got elected. The runoffs in Georgia were both taken. Both of those races were won by Democrats. So the Democrats have the Senate, the House, and the presidency, and they're going to spend money. They're going to get the infrastructure bill that Donald Trump wanted but could never get. They're going to get that. So there's going to be a lot of money flooding into the market. That's going to be very accretive to the market. It's going to support stock prices. And that big stimulus is going to have a meaningful impact. The economic recovery coming out of COVID-19 is meaningful. What I do in the market is I'm going to go and look at second, third quarter of 2021 versus what was happening in 2020. And it's going to be so much better in 2021 that's going to cause stock prices to go up because the market looks forward. And so when we see that people are traveling, they're doing things, they're out, we're eating in restaurants because of the vaccine, and because COVID will be on the tail end by then, in my opinion, that's going to cause the market to go up. So my first prediction is market up by greater than 10% in 2021, but you got to be invested. If you're not invested, you can't take part in an increasing market. So there's going to be rough times too. There's going to be down markets. There's going to be 5 days in a row where the market goes down. People start to get, they're looking for the exits. They're running. Don't do that. That's a buying opportunity. Those really bad markets are buying opportunities. Remember, we think long term. Always think long term. My second prediction for 2021 is the worst nightmares of conservatives will not come true. In every administration, every president that has ever been elected, there's these fringe elements on the left and the right that we always hear about and what they're going to do and how they're going to take over. And my guess is that, yes, there are going to be some of those people in the administration because there's some in every administration, but they tend to be marginalized, pushed to the kind of the rafters a little bit. And you'll hear their voices from time to time. But Joe Biden has been fighting for the presidency for almost 30 years. He is not in any way going to give that up to the far left wing. Now, he will occasionally throw them a bone. And there are going to be some things that conservatives do not like that are going to happen. For instance, the Paris Climate Accord. We're going to be back in the Paris Climate Accord. It's not really good for the United States, long run, economically, to do that. But we are going to do that. It's going to happen. So the only thing that's more difficult than being out of power is being in power. Because once you're in power, the sharpshooting ends and the governing begins. And what happens is you see a lot of factions come out in the parties. So the fringes are going to start infighting. There's going to be a lot of these factions fighting with each other. And there are a lot of conservative Democrats. And so there's no sure thing in legislation, tax increases, things like that. My prediction is the worst fears of conservatives are not going to happen. So stay with me on that before we get crazy, okay? My third prediction is green energy is going to make a comeback into the forefront of investing. And one of the reasons I believe this is because the administration is going to put a focus there, for one, but this EV production, electric vehicles, electrified vehicles of all types, are really starting to ramp up. Now, I do see a ceiling, a limit to where they're going to go, but I don't think we're anywhere near that right now. There's still a lot of implementation in rural America and kind of these divergent cities where there isn't a lot of public transportation. And would anybody even really use public transportation right now with COVID? I don't think so. So I see the EV production rising, especially as the bigger companies, Ford Motor, General Motors, Volvo, Audi, Nissan, these guys are all getting involved in mass producing EVs at a lower price. And even Tesla has come out with a $35,000 EV. I don't like the way it looks, but it does what it says it's going to do. It'll drive you. I just was out in Hawaii where electricity is outrageously expensive. There's a lot of Teslas out there. There's a lot of EVs out there. And it was striking to me because I think in Honolulu, there's really nowhere you can go. There's nothing that's a 2-hour drive away in Honolulu. And yet EV production is very prevalent there. And I would think that owning an EV in Honolulu, on Oahu, that island of Oahu, would be more expensive than owning a gas-powered car. So a lot of people are making this decision not based on economics. They're basing it on really environmental concerns. So realizing that energy has to be produced, the batteries are dirty, they're going to end up in a landfill at some point in time. So these are all things that we have to work out. And on the battery front, there's a couple of companies out there that are working on solid state batteries. Solid battery development is going to be huge because one of the big risks with batteries is fires. My son and I were watching a video one time where it was an electric race car crashed. That thing burned for 8 days. They couldn't put the fire out of the batteries. It's the liquid in the batteries that causes the gas to explode. And in a solid battery, that doesn't happen. So there's going to be some pretty exciting battery developments. And at some point in time, EVs are going to be a real threat to combustion engine. It's not right now. It's going to be in the near future, though. And I think solar is going to make a big comeback. So solar has gotten a lot cheaper. It's gotten a lot more efficient. Now, if you were going to do the Tesla Powerwall for your house, average house is about $30,000. Most people aren't going to do that. If you bring that down to $10,000, I think now we have a market for it. So my third prediction is that green energy is going to make a pretty solid comeback, and we're going to be investing in it. We have to. My job isn't to make environmental concerns our top forefront, although I do care about the environment. I want clean water to drink and the national parks to be beautiful. My job is to make money for people. And so we have to shift focus to where the money's going to be made. Now, there are things that I will not invest in, no matter how profitable it is. Batteries, EVs, solar, environmental stuff is not one of those things. So to me, it's a wash. The batteries that are going to pollute the environment are no different to me than the gas that produces noxious fumes. So I look at it as a wash. Our job is really to help people make money, and that's what we're going to do. My fourth prediction is revenge travel will lead to big returns in select travel stocks. Now, I stole that term, revenge travel, because I love it, and I really do think it's emblematic of what's going to happen. We have all been cooped up for a long time. Some people have not been able to travel since February of last year. Disneyland, Cedar Point, Six Flags, California, Florida, Hawaii, the Caribbean. All these places are going to get traveled to. Hotels are going to get stayed in. Flights are going to be taken. Rental cars are going to be had. Cruise ships, believe it or not, cruise ships are not going anywhere. They're going to be back on the seas they're going to be operating. Those are some of the hardest hit stocks in COVID. And even though they're not sailing right now, their stocks have made a pretty incredible comeback. But they have a long way to go. Airlines have a long way to go. I think those stocks, there's select companies in those industries that are going to do exceedingly well. So my fourth prediction is that revenge travel is going to be real. People are going to want to get out. They're going to want to stay in hotels and want to do those things. And so it's a great place to allocate some resources to in investing. And we're going to do that. My fifth prediction is that oil prices are going to make a recovery and prices are going to go up. So we're going to be paying a little bit more at the pump in 2021 and 2022. And the reason is there's going to be one of the things that the Biden administration is probably going to do is curtail some drilling on public lands. And even though that's not going to kill the oil industry by any means, because there's a glut of oil and gas right now, it is going to cause the market to spook a little bit. And I think you're going to see those prices rise. And so if you're paying in Ohio, we pay about $1.70 right now for a gallon of gas, $1.80, $1.90, somewhere around there. I have to go get gas today, so I should have made this prediction after I got gas, but I think you're going to be paying $2.50 next year in Ohio. So you push those numbers across the board. I was just in Hawaii. They're paying $3.50. They're going to be paying $4 a gallon. We're going to be paying $2.50 a gallon. It's not the end of the world. There's this equilibrium now that we have to achieve in oil and gas because the United States, believe it or not, is the number one producer of oil and gas in the world. And so there's a lot of jobs based on oil and gas. So when oil prices go up, you say, well, that's going to kill your economy. To some degree, it will curtail some transportation, but there's a limit. So there's this thing called elasticity of demand in economics. And what that means is as the price fluctuates, what happens to demand? And you think about things that are necessary, milk, bread, eggs. If the price goes up, it can go up a lot before people start saying, I'm drinking less milk. And for gas, the price really has to hit about $4 a gallon in mid-America before driving really curtails. So we're not really near that point yet. So we don't have a lot of elasticity in our demand. So if price goes up to $2.50 a gallon, mid-America, driving will not curtail. But as you reach that $4 mark, you're starting to see people making economic decisions based on the price of gas. We're nowhere near that right now. So we can allow gas prices to float up a little bit, help the oil and gas industry, and not kill the economy. So I do think that's going to happen in 2021, which leads to my sixth prediction for 2021, which is the Biden administration in a toss, kind of like a bone to the environmentalists, going to make some nominal concessions on the environment. And we saw this really in the Obama administration, where they really didn't get in the way of oil and natural gas production that much. They did stop some pipelines, which the Trump administration then allowed to happen. I think they're still held up in court. But the Obama administration, I think, understood how important oil and gas production was, not only to our country and to the people working in the industry, but it also curtails the importance of the Middle East and world politics. And when that happens, there's a lot of weakness in the Middle East and those governments that want to destabilize everything because they don't have a lot of money. And by allowing us to produce oil and gas, it really marginalizes those rogue regimes like Iran. They just cannot be the bad actors that they want to be. So I do think that the Biden administration probably not going to get in the way of oil and gas, but they are going to toss some to the bones to that left wing of the Democrat Party. So it might be something as simple as stopping a pipeline, okay? Well, we hadn't benefited from the pipeline yet, so you're not going to lose anything from it not going into production. Drilling on public lands might be curtailed or no new leases given. There might be some new regulation, things like that. But it's going to lead to a bump in prices, and that is going to be real. So because we're such an oil-based economy still, no matter how many Teslas you see on the road, we're going to be oil and gas dominated for a long time. It's going to lead to a bump in prices, not the end of the world. Cheap oil leads to lower prices because you think about if you go to Walmart today and buy a tomato, how did it get there? Yeah, somebody grew it someplace, but it probably got put in a box, driven to a train, put on the train. The train went to some central loading zone where it got put on a truck and delivered to a store. Every time you pump up gas prices, those prices have to rise. And so that, again, there's an equilibrium here that we can achieve. So if gas went to $4 a gallon, you're going to see food inflation for sure. And that's something that affects the poor way more than it affects people with money because they're going to have to make an economic decision. One, I got to drive to the store to get it. Then I got to pay for it. And most people, they don't have an unlimited budget. In fact, there's very few people that I know that have an unlimited budget. I know a lot of people with disposable income, but they don't want to spend more than what they have. But if you have a very fixed budget, those higher oil prices, higher food prices, they have a meaningful impact. You can't buy as much as you were a year ago. And when it comes down to food, that's meaningful. So we have to be careful how we do these things. And it is true. There is more and more renewable resources being instituted. They're not all carbon neutral, though. When you think of what it takes to build an EV battery, there's nothing carbon neutral about that. And it's the big fallacy of EVs right now is how clean they are for the environment. While they're driving, yeah, they are probably a little bit cleaner. But what about when they're junked? What happens then to those batteries? These are things that we have to really get through. So at some point, somebody's going to come up with a recyclable battery where maybe you grind it up and rebattery it. We don't have that yet. So in the meantime, we are going to see some bones thrown to the environmentalists. It is going to cause oil prices to rise a little bit. I don't think it's going to sink the economy. I want you guys to be hopeful. That's what I want. I'm very hopeful for our country. I think things are going to be a little bit different for the next 4 years. It doesn't mean the end of the world if you're conservative. It doesn't mean you're going to get everything you want if you're more liberal in your politic. So usually we fall somewhere in the middle. And what I've told a lot of people is that if you put Joe Biden and George W. Bush in a room and you asked them to write policy but not sign their name to it, and you came out and read it, you probably wouldn't know who wrote that. Joe Biden has been fairly moderate over his time in politics. So I don't think it's worst case scenario for anyone. And I don't think it's best case scenario for the Democrats. There are still a lot of conservative Democrats. I think there's going to be a balance of power here. And I think we can make money in it. So I'm looking forward to 2021. I hope you are too. I know it's going to be a better year for the country than 2020 was, mainly because of COVID. And we have several vaccines out now, and they're being distributed. Now, there's some kinks in the distribution channel right now. Those are going to get worked out by the states. In Ohio, teachers are getting vaccinated in February. This thing is starting to roll out, and it's going to be real. It's going to be meaningful. It's going to allow the economy to open. I can't wait till we don't have to wear masks again. I know 99% of us feel that way. There are some people who want to wear masks. And I always say, the people who love the masks the most are ugly people. They want to wear masks, but we don't want to wear masks. We want to get back to a normal economy. And I think that's going to probably happen. Even if it's in the second half of 2021, I really firmly believe it's going to happen this year, primarily because of the vaccines. And we're going to be able to move on. So the economy is going to be pretty good. The market's going to be greater than 10%, in my opinion. That's my prediction. And I think we're going to have a great year. So look, I want you to continue watching and subscribing to the podcast, Financial Revelations. I want you to send questions to this address right here, joshua@epsf.com. I'm still learning. See, I'm still banging lamps and talking too loud at some points in time and talking away from the microphone. So this is all new to me too. But I'm getting better at it, and I know we're getting received because we are seeing subscriptions, views, things like that. Don't be afraid to send in a question. I want questions. I want to ask questions. So next podcast, we're going to answer questions directly from viewers. So get your question in. Joshua at epsf.com, and the address is right here. So look forward to talking to you guys next week. Have a great week. Looking forward to the new year.